This time we'll call to order the November 7th, 2022 regular meeting of Board of Public Works. Betty, roll please.
Mayor Boyd.
I'm here.
Alderperson Carpenter.
Here.
Alderperson Hansen.
Here.
Alderperson Ledvina.
Here.
Alderperson Rush.
Alderperson Rash will not be here, and he's excused. Next item, public comment upon matters not on the agenda. Comments made during the public comment period shall pertain only to matters under the jurisdiction of the Board of Public Works, anyone in person or virtually. Have any public comment upon matters not on the agenda? If so, state your name. For the second time, any public comment upon matters not on the agenda? For the third and final time, any public comment upon matters not on the agenda? All right, let's go to items. Item 1, approval of the October 10th, 2022 Board of Public Works meeting minutes.
Make a motion to approve.
Second.
Motion by Dan, seconded by Shayna. Any discussion? Seeing there is none, all those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Item 2, consideration and possible action on Brown County Solid Waste Management Services Agreement, Amendment Number 1. This is going to Scott.
So what you have in front of you is an agreement that the county presented to us. I believe it was last year. The board and council approved the solid waste agreement with the new rates and all the conditions in it. That was back in 21. So what they have before you is actually amending the existing agreement to actually add a fee for somebody who wanted to, like, say, Pere wanted to haul directly to the landfill. It's called a preferred, rate for direct haul. Right now, if we were hauling to the south landfill, which is, closer to us than actually the going to the transfer station, there's no rate that they would charge us because they don't have that preferred rate. So that's the primary thing that's in this amendment. And then actually, in addition to that, there's some language in the original agreement. So at this time, staff's recommending approving the amendment to the agreement.
Thank you. Questions or comments? It is pretty straightforward, I believe. Jonathan, do you have anything out there?
No, I do not.
All right, I make a motion to approve the Brown County Solid Waste Management Services Agreement Amendment Number 1.
Second.
Motion by me, seconded by Shayna. Any additional discussions or comments? Seeing there is none, all those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Item 3, consideration and possible action on dumpster collection services at city dumpster corrals. Tony.
Good evening. Included in the packet are the two proposals that we received back for the collection services, one from Waste Management, one from GFL. Another vendor did not return a bid. Currently we utilize GFL as our corral collection service, both at Nicolay Square and Marquette Square. Based upon the proposals that they provided back, staff is recommending the approval of GFL to move forward, to go forward on the next 3-year contract. This would be a 3-year contract with the addition of 2 optional years that the city can extend the agreement based upon our preferences and continuation. The 2 proposals that were returned do have significant increases, but GFL's is much less than what Waste Management was. This contract would also lock them into only 5% increases annually, so we can at least budget and predict the future costs. Currently, GFL's new rates will increase our weekly collection by about $42 or 24% per location for garbage and 39% or $46 increase for recycling per location. But the Waste Management would be approximately 80% for both, higher than what we are currently paying. So staff is recommending GFL, and that's all. Sorry.
Kind of broke up a second there. Tony, what was your last two
My
sentences?
my internet. Yeah, my internet has been really scratchy today. I apologize. So staff is recommending GFL as being the based upon the proposals to move forward with.
Okay, so two questions. One, why such a big increase over the next few years? Can you answer that one? And secondly, it's the businesses that will pay for this, correct? Just so the taxpayers hear this part of it. Tony, you want to answer that?
Sure. So the first part would be the increases. So back in 2017, when the first proposal went out, this will be the second time that we're looking for this contract. The first time they had only 1% increases annually, and I think in the last 5 years, there's been a lot of things across the country and the world that have created different increases, both in fuel costs and tipping and recycling fees, that would better justify or explain the differences in just our the rates. Now having this locked in again, though, they've after this 5 years have kind of reset where the rates are, and now it will be locked in and controlled. Both vendors did provide a 5% increase annually, which once they establish their initial rates now would be locked in at the 5%. But that would be the question or the answer to the first one. The second would be, yes, this is assessed to the property owners in those districts that utilize this service. So this is an assessment based upon the type of commercial property that they utilize.
Thank you. Other questions or comments? Dan?
So if I read that correct, Tony, there's no fuel surcharge. This is just going to be a 5% increase, and we won't get hit with no fuel surcharge or anything?
Correct. It's just a 5% annual increase to the cost.
Thank you.
Thank you. Jonathan, did you have anything?
No, I did not, Mayor. Thanks.
Welcome. All right.
I'll make a motion to approve dumpster service proposal from GFL.
I'll second.
Motion by Dan.
Second.
Motion by Dan, seconded by Shayna. Sorry about that, Jonathan.
That's okay.
Any additional discussion or comments? Seeing there is none, all those in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Item 4, consideration and possible action on Second Amendment to 2021 Agreement for 2023 Consulting Services. Eric.
So we're requesting an extension of the contract we have with Robert E. Lee for engineering services. The original contract was 2021. We extended it last year for 2022, and we're requesting one more extension. The main reason is, for those of you on the east side, you're familiar, we're heavily invested in time and whatnot for the TDS project that's ongoing. We have a staff from REL that's in our office full-time managing that, but also assisting with other projects that come in when we're short of staff, like one of the new subdivisions, Mystic Creek. In addition, we had REL help us with the design of the Waterview Heights because of the workload this summer, and that project is ongoing right now. And then also coming up for this upcoming year, we have the pond and drainage system construction for Franklin, Fulton, and Front Street, which is a retrofit of a pond in some vacant property, and they're the ones that helped us design it, and we have permitting to do. And finally, if you take a look at the rates, even though they're 2023 rates, they're still comparable with the other two rates we received from 2021 from the other firms. So we are requesting another extension of the contract.
Very good. Thank you. By the way, you mentioned TDS. That's on the east side right now. Is the west side next? When does that happen?
Yeah, they're continuing to progress, and right now they're in Shayna's area, and they're going to continue working their way towards the river and then jump to the west.
Oh, so that's how that works. Then.
Yeah, they're behind schedule of where they wanted to be. Originally, they wanted to have the whole thing in 18 months. Well, they've got one season of construction in. They're probably going till December, and they're not where they want to be yet. They have ramped it up lately with crews, but eventually it will be going to the west
So
side.
they do pause then in December and then
Yeah, that's,
restart?
our understanding is once the frost is in the ground, they're going to pause.
Okay, well, that makes a lot of sense. Questions or comments and/or motion? I would make a motion to approve the agreement for the 2023 consulting services with REL.
I'll second.
Second.
Oh, we actually waited, and I think we'll give it to him.
Yeah, he
So
could have it.
I'll make the motion, but we're going to give you the second, Jonathan.
Waiting for him to speak.
But we did wait.
Oh, thank you.
We did wait the customary 3
thinking
seconds.
delay.
Yeah, so you got to jump in at 2 seconds, or it's just not going to happen. We got a motion by me, seconded by Jonathan. Do you have that? Any additional discussions and/or comments? Seeing there is none, all those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. That was about 2 seconds, wasn't it? Pretty quick coming back in? Yeah. Well, that moves us to item 5, I believe. Item 5, consideration and possible action regarding online sales of overflow tags. I'm assuming this is Tony. Betty.
Does it require a discussion or an introduction?
It really is Betty. Yeah. Whoa, all 4 of them get to say something tonight. Who else is out there? Chase here?
Oh, jeez.
Betty.
So the online services for offering overflow tags was originally brought up by Alderperson Ledbina. When we looked into that proposal, first off, checked with the city clerk how difficult it would be to have that added on our website. She said it'd be very easy once she got the information she needed. From there we went, Scott and I discussed it, and originally the plan was to go from a $2 overflow tag, which is what we currently have, to increase it to $3 and have the $3 include the postage, so not have an additional postage fee on it. When we looked further into it, the cost of the overflow tags has not actually increased since 2015, I believe. And so talking about it with Tony and within the office, we considered increasing the cost to $3, which would be approximately a 5% increase annually since 2015, which puts us in line with our other public works fees. And then, so increasing the cost of the tags individually to $3 each, still covering 2 bags, which also goes along with increases in tipping fees, as Tony's been mentioning for the last few meetings. Increasing that to $3 per tag, and then adding a $1 postage fee on each order, not per tag.
Didn't we increase all fees across the board? I mean, it's in the budget though, correct?
It's actually in the budget, but what happens? It's actually is a 5% across the board.
Yeah.
Fees that was part of the budget went to council. What happens if the budget is adopted at the hearing in a couple weeks? Then it comes back to the finance committee when they, and I believe in December, setting the fees for 2023. So even if we went 5% on the overflow tags, like Betty says, even though over the years we might have had the 3 and 5% increases on fees, that was one of the things that has not increased when we set the fees. So that's kind of one of the things that staff has recommended is when the team met, somehow that got missed with all the other fees Public Works has. Let's just crank it up to $3. It catches up, from 2015, as Betty had mentioned, and also it includes like I said, as part of the discussion in the online sales. If we did that and we had to ship it, then we would charge them additional for that.
So, okay. Because the item says consideration and possible action regarding online sales of overflow tags and doesn't mention a 5% increase, are we still okay doing that?
What we would be doing is, if the board kind of approves the concept with the overflow, when it comes to the finance committee, we would actually have that as part of our fees
Okay.
schedule coming forward.
Okay, so it'd be a recommendation from us to do that.
Correct.
Very good, thank you. I was just wondering
Yep.
because it wasn't on there,
Yep.
so, yep.
So would
Yeah.
that mean when it goes to that proposal, then it'd be $3.15?
It'd be $3, and then
But you had your 5%, if everything goes up 5%.
Oh,
we would
I'm
actually.
just trying to figure out, okay,
No, it would be $3 because it's $2 now,
Yeah.
so 5% would be $2.10. We're just going to, based on the direction of the board. What happens is every department has to bring their fees forward with the 5% increase or other increases, and then the finance committee will approve it or make recommendations to council in December. So as part of that process, if the board is okay with what Betty brought up with the $3, we'll set that as part of the fees from
Okay.
Public Works that'll go to finance in
Okay.
December.
And people will see that goes from 2 to 3, and if they have
Correct.
questions at finance, they'll bring it up
Correct.
then. Okay.
Yep.
Dan?
Did Betty, did you say we get 2 bags for that fee? I just wanted to make sure, because I've never used it, so for the $3 fee, it would be 2 bags.
Right, so right now it's $2 covers 2 bags, it would go up to $3 covers 2 bags, and then we changed it to have a 13-gallon limit on that when we discussed overflow
Yes.
at the last 2 meetings.
Thank you.
Okay, that was one part of it. How about the next part? Everyone okay with the online portion?
Yes,
Yeah, I am too, so I was taking the other part first, so.
yes.
Jonathan, any comments on this?
Just a quick question. So in addition to the $1 postage, there's also the 2.8% convenience fee that we would be collecting for anyone who orders online, correct? Or who pays online?
Yeah, so the customer, the resident would pay that 2.8% for online processing, but that would go to the credit card company. The city would not actually be gaining anything on that.
And they
Right.
collect that for all online
Okay. Yeah.
transactions. Thank you. So if we have a motion, it would be approving online sales of overflow tags and increasing from $2 to $3, correct? We need both that in there. Okay, so that is my motion if you have that.
I will second that
Motion by me, seconded by Shayna. Any additional discussion and/or comments on overflow tags? Seeing there is none, all those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
Aye.
Sorry. Motion carries. Thank you. Item 6, consideration and possible action on Reid Street Parking Changes. Eric?
All right, so over the past 2 years, we've modified parking on Reid Street in between 5th and 4th to accommodate the ongoing construction of the alley. And we converted some of the parking on the north side to unrestricted to accommodate people who lost their parking, some of the private parking in the alley. So now that the alley's done, we would like to go back and change the section in front of the businesses, kind of on the north side, east half of the intersection, and convert it back to the 3-hour parking that it was before. We've gotten several requests from the businesses, and really that was the intent all the time, was to get that back to 3-hour now that we have all the parking in the alley along with a large amount of unrestricted parking. So what we're recommending is that we update the ordinance to go back and allow parking on the north side of Reid Street from 335 feet west of 4th, which is that driveway near the Pizza Hut, to 4th Street, and make that 3-hour parking.
Very good. Totally unrelated question. There's a white sign for a business on the north side of Reid Street, right near Pizza Hut, and that complex, that 5-story building, seems like an advertising sign. I don't know if someone wants to take a look at that tomorrow. It's been there for a long time. It's like advertising some business that's in that area on the right of way.
That might have been something they put up as
Yeah, it seems more
during
than that, though.
construction because we had the alley shut
I
down.
don't think it is. I think it's a business sign. But just
We
take
will-
a peek, and maybe because of this it'll clean up. But I've been kind of waiting, and sorry about that. Totally unrelated. Any questions on this? Going back to where we were, Dan?
So you had businesses requesting this, Eric. Did you talk to the rest? Is everybody on board on the north side, or just curious?
Well, what we're doing is, I mean, really the intent when we converted it was we were going to leave this 3-hour, and then we needed more of the long, I want to say long-term, but really unrestricted parking. And now that we've gone back, all the people that were parking unrestricted on Reid Street are really enjoying the alley because they can park on that south side of the alley. So that's where everybody's going. So we're not seeing near the parking. We didn't talk to those tenants specifically, but that was kind of the deal is, we're going to get parking unrestricted on Reid. So we're just looking at the area in front of the businesses where we have a lot of turnover. So that's what we're doing.
And I understand that, but once somebody gets something, I just wanted to make sure we're passing something here now, and that kind of they don't think, a few people want it and the other ones maybe didn't want it, that they didn't get no voice in the say here. That's the only thing. I have nothing against it because it wasn't there before. I was just making sure maybe in the future that we make those changes that we consider.
Yeah, I know what you're saying. And in the past, when we do have a major change, like we're going to take away parking on a street, I have sent out surveys. In this case, I didn't, because Dan had worked with the businesses that this was a temporary unrestricted
Okay.
parking on Reid Street.
All right, I'm all good. Thank you very much.
Refresh my memory, but the new stalls, the alleyway, are those 3-hour or long-term, or it varies?
There's a combination. The majority of the stalls on the south side are the unrestricted stalls, so you can stay there as long as you want. And then on the north, the majority of those are 3-hour. However, when you get near the east end of it, that's where we have the parking that's individual properties.
Oh, they have
That was
says
part
private
of the
property?
Yeah, that was part of the negotiation to get the easements to build the alleyway.
And then in the parking lot, behind the buildings, is that 3-hour, or does that vary as well too?
The parking,
Not the parking lot where Cobblestone is and the other places, but by the alley, behind the,
Gerber and Gerbert's and that.
yeah,
those are private parking
I was going to
lots.
say.
they are.
Yeah,
Okay.
those are private.
Okay, all right, just wondering, just curious.
Yeah.
Other questions or comments? Jonathan, anything?
All right. No, thanks though.
All right, I make a motion to approve the Reid Street parking changes.
I'll second it.
Motion by me, seconded by Dan. Any additional discussion or comments? Seeing there is none, all those in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries, thank you. Item 7, consideration and possible action on City of De Pere Cluster Mailbox Unit Informational Guide and Policy. Eric?
So we are being required to install cluster mailboxes, and there's some samples inside your packet or in the guide and the policy by the United States Postal Service. So anytime a new subdivision goes in, we have to install these units. Now, what we've done is we've created a policy, and in the policy originally, I think Howard was the first community to incorporate it, and a lot of the other municipalities have also followed suit now. And so we took theirs and kind of customized it a little bit to fit, the city of De Pere. But really, the purpose is, for the policy is, number one, we have to have it, so that's why we've created it. We cannot go with the individual mailboxes. But really, it is to kind of help identify the process between, with the United States Postal Service and the location and the platting and how we have to coordinate with them. Address some of the engineering considerations for where we place these CBUs, as we call them. In addition to that, as part of the platting, we need to plat a niche beyond the right-of-way for the cluster mailboxes. We don't want them directly behind the curb because they're big and they're a hazard, potentially, could be. In addition, then, it provides information on how we construct the pads, the types of mailboxes we're going to get so that we have standardization if things need to be replaced, and then also the mailbox operation. And it is important for everybody to understand is the city is going to help facilitate getting these installed, but we aren't going to maintain them. We aren't going to own them, just like we don't own mailboxes now. Everybody owns their own mailbox. However, the guide and the policy and also the language on the plat will help establish that the property owners are responsible. And if they don't follow through and things are damaged, the city has the ability to do that and then invoice everybody who is assigned that mailbox. And the assignments occur as part of the platting process. We assign the lots to the CBU. So really, that's the purpose for this.
So you say the homeowners, and it's a new subdivision, you've got, 100 homes or whatever it is, and not that big of, how do you figure out who to go after as far as a homeowner?
So what we do is in the packet, and when the plat comes through, we'll create a map that identifies which lots go to which CBU location. And generally, we don't want to go with more than 26 lots to one CBU location. And then those lots are called out on the plat. So then those lots are tied back. And then when we get the CBUs, we'll work internally, Betty and I, to label everything, and we will hand out the keys. But then once the keys are handed out, we're out of it. And if the property owner loses it, they're going to have to work with the USPS, Postal Service, to get new keys and the cost for that. So really, though, it is to help make sure that as part of the development, we get the CBUs built correctly. And as we go forward, a process if they get damaged or need to be
Are
repaired.
these things well received? Any complaints on, as far as?
Well-
I don't hear of anything. You guys hear of anything about cluster?
Well, I have a question.
Sure.
This was, East River subdivision got built, cluster mailboxes were put in. Down below.
Right,
Here.
right.
And then what happened, do you know why the postal system quit that? Because all of a sudden, all other subdivisions went back to mailboxes. And now,
Yeah,
now
it's
they're
kind of
going to
haphazard,
cluster.
isn't it?
Yeah,
Now they
I-
went back to cluster
I'm on
mailboxes.
Rural and I have a mailbox, yet you go west where they were putting in the clusters, they just stopped. Yeah, that's kind of odd.
That's just my curious. When I was working with
Yeah.
the city, all of a sudden cluster mailboxes went in for whatever reason. And then all of a sudden they went away. And now you see cluster mail. I get the advantage of cluster mailbox. I totally get it for the postal service. But I was wondering why 20 years went by that they did it, then they didn't do it. It's just kind of weird, but.
Yeah, and I don't know either. And then, even when the time was starting to happen, 2019, supposedly they were coming and we had a subdivision come in, the developer didn't have to do it. But now they all have to go in and everybody's doing it. So we're just trying to set something up so we have a process in place to manage this.
Scott?
The other thing that'll be happening in the near future, that staff will be bringing to the board and then council, we got to revise our ordinance to address cluster mailboxes. If you go on the public works section or street section, it talks about, the standard standalone mailbox, how it has to be mounted and that sort of thing. We need to address these existing cluster mailboxes, who's responsible to maintain them, and items like that, and if they're not maintained and we don't really have any means to enforce it, they're in our right of way, but nothing's really, even if you go off of Ridgeway Boulevard, we got several cluster mailboxes that are down there, and how they got installed way back then, I don't know, but, our ordinance doesn't really address it.
Shouldn't this, are we doing that new code? Couldn't it be in the plan?
Well, it won't, it'll be actually part of the public works, because we actually got a section
Oh.
on the street side that actually talks about the mailboxes.
Oh.
And because it's in the right of way, it's something that has to be addressed in that part of the code. So what it'll be is, if you look at our code where it talks about just standalone mailboxes, we'll add another section to that code to address the cluster mailbox. So that'll be probably coming in, first quarter of, 2023.
Very good. Shayna?
So then with that change, are you gonna have to notify all of the property owners that are using the cluster units currently, like the ones on Ridgeway?
Well, the Ridgeway, and I'm sure we know who are utilizing them now, but I'll give you an example. We have existing cluster boxes, are part of a brand new subdivision in Pine Trail Crossing, which is by Susie Elmiter School. The developer puts them in because the USPS wants them. Well, there's already issue with one of them, and some of the residents or city, you got to do something. Well, the staff contacted the developer. Well, the developer is like this, we're out of there. It's built. Well, how do we enforce it and how do we get it addressed? In this particular case, once the ordinance is actually created, we'll have the means, because we know who they serve. It'll be that group, for example, if it's a particular cluster box there's an issue with, then we'd be sending notices to those property owners. You need to take care of and address that cluster box.
And I get what you're trying to say, but it's a later discussion. That isn't what we're discussing tonight.
Sure.
So I'll just move on. But I understand. Yes, thank you.
Well, that said, you want to make a motion?
Yes, I make a motion to approve with staff recommendations here.
And I will second that. Motion by Dan, seconded by me. Any additional discussion or comments now that we have a motion? My computer just completely died. Everyone see that? Seeing there is none, all those in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. No, I got plenty of power. Let's go to the next item. Item 8, consider and possible action on Alderperson Hansen's request regarding the city's sidewalk repair program requirements. I'm assuming we'll kick it out to you first, Jonathan. What do you got?
Yeah, thanks, Mayor. So I had a constituent who had a few sidewalk slabs that qualified for replacement due to a street tree that was heaving up the sidewalks, and the city did pay for it because it was a street tree. There was one sidewalk slab, however, which did not qualify for replacement because it did not meet the defective sidewalk criteria, and the guidelines for that are in the packet. So the issue with this sidewalk slab was vertical displacement. So with our current guidelines, the vertical displacement has to be at least 3/4 of an inch high and also 12 inches in width. And, you know, most of the time when there's an issue with vertical displacement, it's between two abutting sidewalk slabs, where one slab is taller than the other that abuts it. This is kind of a unique situation, however, because the vertical displacement that is causing the issue is a result of an internal crack within a single sidewalk slab. And so anyway, this crack, and there's some pictures in, I'm sorry, there's not pictures in the agenda, but Scott forwarded some to the board.
Sent. Yep.
Yeah, so, yep. So as you can see in the pictures, it's not quite 3/4 of an inch high, so it doesn't meet the criteria, but it is kind of a really sharp displacement, and it kind of sneaks up on you when you try walking past it, because you know, it's within that single slab. So I just wanted to have a discussion to see if we have this internal cracking within a slab, if we need to have kind of a separate set of guidelines to address these types of situations. Because I did walk it, and it does seem like it could be a hazard. And I'm wondering if, you know, perhaps there is a bit of a oversight with our guidelines in terms of not specifically addressing those types of situations. So I just wanted to bring this forward and have staff kind of weigh in on whether or not they think these types of sidewalk issues should be handled differently.
Thank you. First of all, Jonathan, you should be careful walking on sidewalks and concrete slabs. Remember your little issue you had?
Yes.
Yeah, I'm worried about. I'm worried about you. Don't do that.
Broke my ankle twice last year, so
All right.
do not want to do it a third time.
No, I imagine not. Comments or questions from anyone here? Eric, Scott, whatever. Is everyone aware that when he's talking about that would be the on the slab itself? Do you see the picture now? That
No, I didn't. It didn't come up on my
did
phone.
you show it to him, Shayna?
Shayna showed me.
Yeah, so it'd be a split within the slab, I guess is the best way to describe it. I can see it right now. You know what it is.
Well, yeah, so when we have splits in the slab, they got to fill them in or do something to it. Am I correct? I know my son-in-law and them I know that's off different, but if you're
You're talking about a horizontal displacement where it's not necessarily
Yes.
vertical, it's horizontal, where it might be split in the panel. It's more than, I believe our guidance is 1/2 inch crack for more than 3 feet. They got to epoxy them or, you know, fill the crack. That's what you're referring to?
Yes.
Yes.
So-
We have that now.
this crack here is vertical. So we don't have a policy on this, or?
Well, the policy that you have, it's in the packet, it's a 3/4 inch high or greater for 12 inches of the joint. Typically, the displacement is at the joint.
Yes.
Alderperson Hansen is correct that, you know, it's not very often you have it in, you know, not at a joint. So it's the way that, like I said, the policy you have in your packet, it's at the specific joint or, you know, edge of the sidewalk panel.
So who would be liable or responsible? I mean, I kind of take it on the homeowner that if the sidewalk isn't very good, they already just got 2 of them replaced. I mean, they could have just had the contractor and say, I'll pay the other one. But I guess not everybody would do the same thing as I would. If it's such a bad thing, you know what I mean? I replaced one of mine before I was told to get it fixed.
In this particular case, if any of that panel, and Eric, correct me if I'm wrong, any of that panel had to be replaced, it was because an existing tree was there at one time, so the city would have had to replace it. We didn't replace it because it didn't meet any of our requirements.
And I understand that. Okay.
Yeah, and there was, I think there was a slab in between, so it wasn't like it was right next to one that was replaced, but I don't recall for sure. Because there was a couple spot slabs related to this old tree. But again, we'll do whatever the board wants. I don't know, how long has this policy been in place? Betty, did you look it up?
She did actually.
I didn't look up specifically how long the policy has been in place, but I did find back to 1994 that we had the same qualifications.
So the key will be, if we do this under this situation, this will probably be the city's to fix, which is fine, but then we're going to have to do that for everybody. So if we're going to establish a height criteria for mid-block cracks, we're going to apply that to everybody. So that's the only thing we need to be cognizant of.
Do we have any idea? Not a clue, huh?
No, we would have to go around and, take pictures and maybe see what we've got out there. Because there are cracked slabs. Do they all heave like this? No. I mean, every slab is different. So we'd have to look.
Yeah, I mean, if I wanted, Scott?
And Bill, what Eric is on, typically the vertical displacement is at the joint because that's what typically moves. Because it's not very often you're going to see a 5-foot section of concrete, break in the middle and heave like that. So it's typically at it. Eric's right. I mean, whether it's city costs or the property owner cost, it would be another, expense, potentially that the property owners would have. To your point, Alderperson Carpenter, the horizontal displacement, that's really any part of the slab. Even if the joints, were wider, they would have to feel them. If the board wanted to, you could really, it's the vertical displacement is still a criteria, but you could, change it, where it's 3/4 inches higher or greater for, 12 inches of the joint or anywhere else in the slab, which would then qualify for this. But I mean, our concern to the board is this will, the criteria gets, I won't say gets stricter, but these are more things we look for when we go evaluate it. And with the cost of these panels, if, a property owner had to replace them, it starts getting very costly for them.
Again, in this case, though, the argument is that this is because of a tree. I'm pointing at the slab right here and then the vertical. But probably in most cases, it would be the homeowner's responsibility to pick up the cost for whatever that slab is or the vertical displacement. Yep.
So would grinding not be applicable to a slab that's split like this? Yep. Why couldn't you just grind it? I don't know anything about cement.
So because this, a homeowner or even, could have ground it, but again, the way this is the way the criteria is, it's at the joint. This is not at the joint. So when we go, whether it's a homeowner or the city's panel, it doesn't have any requirements to do anything with it because it doesn't meet our existing sidewalk requirements, repair requirements.
When would this
Yeah,
merit replacement? Because obviously it's going to buckle a little bit and get worse.
especially if it's only being looked at every 8 years.
Yeah, I'm just curious, because that could get a lot worse.
It could get a lot worse, but the tree hasn't been there, so it's probably not. 'Cause
Right,
the
but if
tree's
it was
gone.
something else somewhere else and it just,
I mean, I think the thing we got to remember is we're talking about this one situation, but we have sidewalk all over the city that this criteria has been used for on a regular basis. And it's been a very effective policy. Scott and I had a little internal debate. I run a lot. And for me, I would notice that 3/4 inch displacement on an odd crack in the middle of the slab sooner than I would see the 3/4 inch on a joint, just because, I see a crack. But everything is different. But so, when do we start applying a different criteria to a crack that's in the middle of a block or a joint? But yeah, things will move over time, but I don't think we have a significant trip and fall issue. We don't track it. Every once in a while, we get a complaint of a trip or a fall, and then we go out and react accordingly. But this crack might stay there for years. The sidewalk might crack other directions which warrant its replacement. Who knows how it's going to deteriorate? But, you look at trees and trees, an active tree growing there would be a lot more likely to impact a slab. And we have that where, okay, we go out and we do our measurement and maybe there's a 1/2 inch crack at a joint by a tree. That tree continues to grow. In 4 years, now the crack is 3/4 inch for greater than a foot, and it's in between gaps. So You know, I guess I would just be cautious that we're not trying to micromanage this one event, because whatever we do, we have to do throughout. And this is a tree that's gone. This may be there for 20 years. You know, sometimes these sidewalks last a really long time, but we have again, I go back to, we have a policy and a criteria that seems to be working because we don't have a lot of issues in the city. So.
Dan?
This may not be fair to say, but I'm going to say it anyway. It's to me, it's like somebody trying to beat around the bush and get something free from the city. You replaced 2 slabs already, if I'm correct here, because of tree. Now this is there's slabs in between, and this is bad. I just really think the homeowner on his own would just want to fix the slab,
And they can do that.
and they should do that on their own and just be. But since we were there and replaced 2, I feel like they're trying to get a little more free. And I understand our program, why we have it, and I think it is a good program. The tree caused the troubles, but we don't consider this. And now I think this is being brought up, and I do think it's a very few events, and
And that's just it. If it's very few events, I mean, it never hurts to look at policy. It's been around,
Yes.
you know, I mean, it's been a very long time since we've taken a kick at this. So I have no problem with that part of it. But I also don't want to have staff and resources, you know, utilizing their time for us to direct them to do a random check of all the sidewalks in the city. I'm not sure what that would accomplish. So I'm not comfortable doing that. Scott?
I guess one of the, this is back at Eric. I think the mayor asked the question, you know, at what point, Eric, would we actually, say the tree was there, at what point would we have actually, what criteria would we use to actually replace that panel?
Well, the criteria that's in front of you. I mean, if that slab continues to move and the 3/4 inch or higher is 12 inches for length, then it comes out. If the slab cracks in multiple places, then potentially it comes out. I mean, we would continue to follow the criteria. Just like now, a slab, I mean, you can go around the city and see slabs that are heaved 1/2 inch. The whole slab. Well, we're not going to do anything because when we checked it, it met the criteria. We're not going to go back in 3 years and check it again. But in our cycle in 8 years we come by, if it doesn't meet the criteria, we'll
So even though
Take
it's
care of
not at a joint, it's a mid, slab, we'd still look at it for vertical displacement then.
sure.
Okay. That's kind of what I was getting at. We're going to check that anyway.
yes, I'm just going to say I'm going to have I'd have to look and see when we're due again on my street. But I know one sidewalk slab that's going to have to get ground or mud jacked or whatever come next time around or replaced,
Yeah, I've got
whatever
a
it
few, yeah.
may be, you know what I mean? Because I know one's getting down in my sidewalk area.
Jonathan, do you have any comments or you know, we can get a motion on this if anyone would like to have a motion. Shane, do you have sorry, Jonathan, Shayna first.
What I'm hearing is that that's something that we look for, this cracked slab, but it's not in the guidelines. But you're saying that we would eventually.
I'm saying I would treat the vertical displacement wherever, if the crack is in the center of the slab, when I look at this, it's a vertical displacement. So it's irrelevant if it's in the center of the slab or it's at the joint, it's a vertical
So it's
displacement.
covered under that?
Yes, that's what I'm saying.
Okay,
Okay,
then I'm
And-
fine with this.
yeah,
Yeah.
great. Jonathan?
Yeah, I respect the board's opinion and kind of hesitancy to change the criteria. I'm glad you did bring it forward. Like you mentioned, Mayor, this hasn't been looked at in a while, and you know, I'm cognizant about having additional assessment costs for homeowners if we kind of make the criteria stricter. But I did want to bring it forward because it did seem like a safety hazard, and you know, if there's other sidewalks like that throughout the city that have this kind of an issue, I think we should require the homeowner to replace it during that 8-year cycle. So, but yeah, I respect the rest of the board wants to stay put with the criteria. So,
Thank you, Jonathan. Yeah, it's good that we do look at stuff like this. I have no problem with that at all. Eric?
Yeah, the only thing I would add is, again, you know, we talked about what happens if things change in between cycles. If someone calls and says, hey, there's a trip hazard, we go out and look at it. So if this changes, this location would get worse, and they call, we would go look at it.
Okay.
Because we do get those, and they're looked at on an interim basis. We don't just say, oh, we're not coming back for 4 years, we'll go look at it.
Did you hear that, Jonathan?
Yes, I did. Thank you. And at that point, Eric, though, it still might be the homeowner's responsibility since the tree is no longer the issue, correct?
Potentially, I guess we'd have to look at it. This is kind of a unique situation where the tree is already gone, but I guess I'm just talking in general terms. If something changes at a sidewalk over in between the 8-year period and that the change warranted action, we would take action, and then we'd have to figure out who the responsibility of the cost would be.
Scott?
Oh. Yeah, that sounds good. And even like in this situation, because the tree initially caused the crack, that could be a point of discussion. But yeah, thanks for clarifying that.
Thank you. Anything else, Jonathan?
No, I'm good. Thanks, Mayor.
Thank you. No action on that then, discussion only. Next item, future agenda items. I would propose that we get the time change on the clock, maybe sometime in the future. Did you? That's not the time. Did you notice that's not the time? Okay. Anyone future agenda items? Jonathan? Just levity in the chamber here, that's all it is. Nothing? Okay.
Yeah, I'll just real quick, if we could just get an update on what projects, construction projects, specifically street projects, are getting carried over to next year. I know that like Lorry Way, Scout Way, Nob Hill, Barber Lane in my district, that's getting carried over for next year, which is fine. But just wonder if we can get an update from staff, even if it's, it can be Friday memo, I guess, but just kind of an update on what projects are going to have to be delayed until next year.
Very good. Eric, do you want to?
Yeah, in fact, we had just sent a notice out to utility companies of the upcoming projects, and those carried over, and Scott said I should include that in a Friday memo, so I will include it in a Friday memo.
Very good. Yeah, good idea. Anything else, Jonathan? Anyone
Nope,
here?
that should do it.
Okay. Next item, I'd make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
I'll second that.
Did he? Oh, he had his light on. We're gonna go
I went
through.
too slow.
Motion by me, seconded by Jonathan, because you had your light on. You were identified. It was just a slow one there. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. We're officially adjourned. Thank you, everybody.